My name is Dennis Carver, and for 31 years, that rocking chair on the porch was mine. This year, I drove 4 states to sit in it, and found it folded up in the garage instead. I'm 71, retired now, and I built that lake cabin in Michigan myself, board by board, back when my kids were still small enough to ride on my shoulders. Every summer since, our whole family gathers there for the reunion, and every summer, that same rocking chair sits at the head of the porch, facing the water, waiting for me. This year, I pulled into the gravel driveway after an 8-hour drive, tired but happy, and walked up to the porch to find someone else's folding chair sitting where mine had always been. I stood there a moment, confused, before my son David came out to greet me. "Dad, hey, good drive?" He hugged me quick, already half turning back toward the door. "David, where's my chair?" He paused just slightly too long before answering. "Oh, we moved some stuff around this year. It's in the garage, I think. We can grab it later." Something about the way he said it, easy and quick, like it was nothing, made my stomach turn just a little. 31 years, and that chair had never once moved without me moving it myself. I let it go that first evening. I told myself it was nothing, just David being scattered, too much to organize with 40 relatives showing up over a long weekend. But over dinner, I noticed something else. My daughter-in-law, Renee, kept pulling my nephew Marcus aside, speaking low, glancing toward the cabin's old filing cabinet in the corner of the living room, the one that had held all the property paperwork for as long as I could remember. I didn't think much of it that first night. It wasn't until the second morning, walking past the garage to grab my chair myself, that I noticed something that made my chest go tight. On a folding table just inside, next to a stack of paper plates and half-empty coolers, sat a manila folder labeled Carver Family LLC, Ownership Transfer. I stood there a long moment before I opened it. Inside were several pages of legal language about forming a family limited liability company for the cabin property, meant, according to the cover letter, to simplify inheritance and reduce future tax burden for the whole family. At the bottom of the transfer document was a signature line with my name on it, already signed, dated 3 weeks earlier. I hadn't signed anything 3 weeks earlier. I hadn't even seen this document before that moment. I sat down right there on an overturned cooler, my hands not quite steady, thinking back over the last several months. David had called more than usual lately, always friendly, always asking how I was holding up on my own since your mother passed, always mentioning, almost in passing, how nice it might be to get the cabin situated properly before anything happened to me. I'd brushed it off every time. I never imagined situated meant this. I called my old friend Harold that same afternoon, stepping away from the noise of the reunion to sit in my truck where nobody could hear me. Harold had spent 30 years as a real estate attorney before retiring, and he'd known our family since before that cabin even had a roof on it. "Dennis, you sound rattled," he said. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The chair, the folder, the signature I never made. Harold went quiet for a long moment. "Dennis, if that signature's forged, this isn't a family disagreement anymore. That's fraud, and depending on how that LLC is structured, it could mean you lose control of that cabin entirely, permanently, without ever having agreed to any of it." Harold walked me through what to look for, and that evening, while the family gathered around the bonfire, I quietly reviewed the rest of the folder. Buried near the back was the ownership breakdown for the new LLC. David and Renee were listed as majority owners, 60% combined. I was listed at just 15%, alongside minor shares split among my other children, who I suspected had no idea any of this even existed yet. The next morning, I found a quiet moment with my daughter, Michelle, who'd flown in from Colorado and clearly hadn't been part of whatever this was. When I showed her the folder, her face went pale. "Dad, I never signed anything like this. Nobody asked me to." That confirmed what I already feared. This wasn't a family decision. It was David and Renee's decision, dressed up to look like one. Harold connected me that week with a fraud investigator he trusted, a retired detective named Priya Anand, who reviewed the transfer documents and agreed the signature required a proper forensic comparison. While that process got underway, Harold suggested I let David believe nothing had changed, at least until we had solid proof of what he'd actually done and why. It was hard, sitting through the rest of that reunion weekend, watching David play the gracious host in a cabin he was quietly trying to take from the rest of us. all while my chair sat folded up in the garage like it didn't matter anymore. On the final night, after most of the family had gone to bed, I stayed up on the porch, and I overheard David and Renee talking in the kitchen through the screen door, thinking everyone else was asleep. Once the LLC paperwork clears with the county, we can start talking to that developer about the lakefront parcel, Renee said. Dad's 15% won't matter once we control the board vote. He's not going to just let that happen, David said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced of his own words. He doesn't have to let it happen, Renee said. He already signed it. As far as anyone official is concerned, this is already done. I sat there in that rocking chair's absence, hearing my own son's wife explain, calmly, how a piece of paper I never touched had already decided the fate of 31 years of my family's summers, and any last doubt I had about what needed to happen next disappeared completely. Priya's forensic handwriting analysis came back 2 weeks later, confirming what Harold and I already suspected. The signature on the transfer document didn't match my known signature in several key details, particularly in pressure and letter formation consistent with someone tracing rather than signing naturally. Harold filed to void the LLC transfer immediately, along with a formal fraud complaint. Because the document had already been submitted to the county for filing, the case moved through the courts faster than expected, given the clear forensic evidence and Michelle's confirmation that no family meeting or vote had ever actually taken place. At the hearing, 2 months later, the judge reviewed the forensic report and voided the entire LLC transfer, restoring the cabin's ownership fully back to me as it had always been. David and Renee were both charged with forgery and attempted fraud. Renee, whom the investigation found had drafted the actual paperwork herself and coordinated with the developer directly, received the harsher sentence, 18 months, while David received probation and mandatory restitution for the legal costs the family incurred fighting this. It's been almost a year now. David and I are slowly working through what's left between us. Careful, honest conversations that look nothing like the easy relationship we used to have. Renee and David separated a few months after the charges were filed. This summer, the whole family gathered at the cabin again, same as every year for 32 years running now. I walked up to the porch, and there it was, waiting for me exactly where it always had been. My rocking chair, facing the water, nobody having dared move it since everything came out. I sat down slow, the same way I have every summer since I built that porch with my own 2 hands, and for the first time in over a year, it finally felt like nothing had ever been taken from me at all. If this story got to you, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.